Hey everyone. So this chapter basically covers Yakuto's childhood after being reborn, completely devoid of any memories from his previous life. And the one thing I loved about this chapter touching upon the idea of reincarnation and how for as happy a life as Yakuto is living, there is that ever-present undercurrent of tragedy to the fact that he grew up having no memories of his previous life up until they all started flooding back to him. And even that, as shown, was its own traumatic experience for Yakuto. Like seriously, that whole scene of all of his memories coming flooding back into him. I'm actually kind of impressed Yakuto didn't maybe like go comatose from having to remember all that at once. Like just having all those memories kind of flooding back at you at once, but both traumatic and the joyful. Like it doesn't matter that the context of the memory, like stuff, just remembering stuff like that for so long is gonna cause you some kind of mental harm in some way. Um, I also like how Mashima gives us these little moments of closure in the sense of showing us that however much Ikuto was unable to live a full life raised by his parents, he still got to spend his life with them, however brief it was between both like between both his previous life and this one. Like he still had those moments where he could spend them he could spend with his parents and enjoy the much life he had for however little time he could, and it was a little time he could before deciding to continue his mission and just taking solace in the fact that he could still spend time with them. Um, one thing I really liked that Mashima covered in this chapter is how he managed to dig into what I would call parallels through exposition. Like a lot of the lore dumping that Mashima is doing through the priest, telling Yakuto about the history of the world, you can see how Yakuto gained the knowledge and inspiration to start his own revolution, but by basically learning from the history of his enemy and what Elfid did, and how a lot of what he's doing now is again him weirdly twist in a weirdly twisted way, using Elfid's own using his own tactics and his own methods against him. Which, yeah, let's talk about that because while the reveal of Elfid using humanity's faith to raise an army and subjugate the demon world isn't all that surprising, the reveal afterwards is much more so where after after regaining his memories and reaffirming his desire to kill God, Himiko reveals Yakuto that Elfid's power is stored in the cavern in the human world called Dead Rock, the Rock of the Dead, which, yeah, roll credits moment aside, this is one of those reveals that's so obvious I'm kind of shocked it never once occurred to me that hiding one's power in plain sight is the ultimate defense because of the people's faith and loyalty in God that they would never think to look for basically Elfid's slumbering power for any reason because their faith would keep them blinded from thinking about it, whereas keeping it in the demon world, it carries a much greater risk because at that point you do have that you do kind of have that at one point the demons would basically rise up at one point or another. So it's like gaining the faith of people first is the greatest protection against someone like turning against him. Although even again, as we've seen, even that kind of seems to be backfiring. Even that seems to be backfiring, all pretty much because of basically the efforts on Himiko and Yakuto's part. So yeah. Um, with that said, let's talk about Himiko for a minute because she definitely proved herself to be a rather interesting character in this chapter. As we learn, Himiko is one who believes in the truest form of religious freedom, you could say. Like the will to believe in whatever you want, so long as it's your own. And obviously from a narrative perspective, it is very much Himiko drip feeding, drip feeding information to Yakuto about Elfid's influence on the human world. But from a religious existential perspective, it is fascinating to see a character like this, who is a religious figure, teach a rather informative lesson that true faith and belief is not to a singular being, but to one's own beliefs that your religious faith is truly defined by what you believe, not what others tell you. Even adding the nature adding the nature is just as that nature is just as responsible for the world and its people as much as God is. And it's one of those messages where it truly does tap into the idea of something that, let's be honest, is kind of seen as it would be seen as a sin in most like hard line religious circles in the way religion is taught nowadays, or teach nowadays, which is the idea that personal belief is just as important as the collective belief, if not more so sometimes. That no matter which religion you follow, never let it strip you of your ability to think freely for yourself. It's okay to follow the basic rules and guidelines of religion, but don't let it consume you. And yeah, it's one of those lessons about religion that, while very simple, I feel also feels very necessary. Feels like a very necessary one for those who may find themselves in that crisis of faith moment in their lives. Um, in saying that, this chapter did still raise the question from you just how Mashima is going to handle the whole problem from Yakuto being mortal now. Like, however skilled he's become over the past 10 or so years, he doesn't have his powers anymore. So that just begs the question of how Yakuto himself plans to fight back against Elfid when the time comes. Because however weak Elfid will grow by severing his connection from the faith people have in him, as long as he holds on to even the tiniest amount of strength left, he's still a threat. And based on all the information we've got in this chapter, it sounds like the plan is to somehow destroy the power that's been locked away within the Dead Rock in order to truly strip him of his power completely. But again, how does one go about destroying that? Because that feels like a completely different beast than stripping people's faith away from him. So I think more than anything, it's gonna be interesting to see how Mashima ties these two plot threads together, and even more so, just what the even more so, just how one of these is going to complement the other. Like, if he loses power, does he still have some kind of power by the maintained faith, or if he loses faith, is he going to be able to still tap into that power that's locked away? Like, it's just kind of an interesting duality between these two things for me. Um, with that said, guys, that's all I've got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, on a Blue Sky, Analyst Crunchyroll, be sure to notification bell, subscribe button, and just share it around, guys. Dark Knight, everyone, signing off. Later, everyone.